Veterans Day 2012. Welcome, everyone. A beautiful day in Russellville, Arkansas for the Veterans Day Parade, to be followed by the annual Salute to Freedom ceremony. This year's theme, Remembering World War I, the Great War. And our thanks, of course, as always, to the chairman of that particular committee, that's Jim Bob Humphrey, and to the Salute to Freedom Committee, which puts together an outstanding Veterans Day Parade each and every year. Our first group, of course, is the Color Guard, presented by the Arkansas Tech University, ROTC. Don't forget our great sponsors include, for this Veterans Day Parade, Advanced Collision Solutions, and Representative Andrea and Philip Lee. Here is that riderless horse. This year's parade will not have a grand marshal. Instead, a riderless black horse is leading the way by a soldier in Class A uniform. The riderless horse symbolizes a warrior who would ride no more. Oh, what a great time to see some antique military vehicles, including what is more famous than the U.S. Army Jeep. Really came into its own in World War II, and of course is still a favorite brand of vehicle driven by Americans and those around the world. But it all began as a multi-purpose vehicle for the Second World War. Some of our great veterans, of course, riding along in those Jeeps. There's a lot of controversy as to how the name Jeep came into existence, so we won't favor one over another. But the name Jeep has, of course, stayed with us throughout the years, and it means a great military vehicle, an all-purpose vehicle for lots of usages by the military and now by civilians. The Veterans Day Parade 2012. Here's a camoed vehicle, an SUV. Here's Lieutenant Colonel retired Troy Burris, and who is better known in association with veterans activities than Troy Burris, who, of course, part of that famous group during World War II that served in the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska. What would a parade be without a great marching band? And that means the Russellville Crimson Cyclone Marching Band of Russellville High School. The Veterans Day Parade being brought to you by Caldwell Banker, James R. Ford & Associates, and Liberty Bank. And there's the flag line for the Russellville Cyclone Marching Band. Traditionally one of the state's most outstanding marching bands and concert bands right here in Russellville. Well, here are a group of trucks from various armories with veterans proudly standing in those vehicles, riding in those vehicles, and you can hear the applause from those attending the parade. A big thank you to these who have served and are serving us as a part of our armed forces around the world. Here's a National Guard truck coming by right now. Beautiful day for Veterans Day here in Russellville. It just couldn't be better. A beautiful day to honor these for 2012. This float, of course, is for the Disabled American Veterans, the DAV. A very big part of veterans' activities now, getting those veterans to their doctor's appointments, and a big group there, the Disabled American Veterans. Here's that van we were talking about for the DAV. Boy, the number of miles that it travels each and every month serving veterans here in the Arkansas River Valley. The Veterans Day 2012 Parade being brought to you by Advanced Collision Solutions and by Caldwell Banker, James R. Ford and Associates. Here's Cub Scout pack number 210, and of course the Cub Scouts, a very patriotic group, and they want to say thank you to all the veterans on this Veterans Day 2012. They've got the Cub Scout flag, but even more importantly, they're carrying proudly the U.S. flag. Here is the Marine Corps League. And remember, folks, that the Marine Corps League is sponsoring this year's Toys for Tots campaign. So remember, those toys that you can donate go to underprivileged children here in the Arkansas River Valley. So that's the Marine Corps League doing a great job. Cub Scout pack number 202 right behind, carrying a whole group of American flags. And now the Patriot Guard Riders, a group of veterans on motorcycles riding so that we might remember the sacrifice made by veterans in all wars. We're saluting World War I this particular year at the Veterans Day Parade, but you know, we have to also remember those of World War II, those of the Korean conflict, those of the Vietnam conflict, those who have served in the Middle East in Operation Desert Storm, and those who are still serving and have served even in peacetime around the world to, of course, secure our freedoms, to secure those things that we enjoy as free Americans here in the United States. But thanks to the Patriot Guard Rider to keep us reminded of the great work of veterans always. Your Veterans Day Parade 2012 is brought to you by Liberty Bank and also by Representative Andrea and Philip Lee for this Veterans Day 2012. Through Russellville, beautiful sunshiny day. We couldn't ask for more, and it's almost like the good Lord is shining down and saying thank you also to the veterans throughout our American history, but saluting particularly those of World War I, this Parade 2012. Here's Cub Scout pack number 182, a big group of Cub Scouts marching in the Veterans Day Parade. They're all in uniform also. Here we have the Whirlwind Marching Band of Russellville Junior High School playing America. And isn't it great that these young people are involved in the Veterans Day Parade so that they get a feeling, they get to also know just how important it is that we salute the veterans who have shaped and protected our freedoms. Well, the Boy Scouts are not only in presence for the parade today, but they're not outdone either as the Girl Scouts of America come marching by with their flags also flying. And the Girl Scouts, they want to be a part of saluting the veterans also this 2012 Veterans Day. And there's one who goes running off into the crowd. And back. A beautiful Veterans Day. And a big crowd on hand to say thank you. Veterans Day 2012. Again, a big thanks to Jim Bob Humphrey and his task force for putting this together. And here's the Red Cross, the American Red Cross. How many times from way back to when We were talking about World War I. The Red Cross was there throughout all of the conflicts that the United States has been involved with. The American Red Cross has been there, and they have been there as recently as, of course, Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast, helping during disaster. Well, here is the Arkansas Tech University Marching Band, Arkansas's Band of Distinction, directed by Christopher Anderson. The Green and Gold, marching through downtown Russellville to salute the veterans on 2012, and this year particularly saluting all those veterans as we remember World War I, the Great War. As the Arkansas Tech University Marching Band passes by, playing the Arkansas Tech Fight Song. Your sponsors for this year's 2012 Veterans Day Parade include Advanced Collision Solutions, Liberty Bank, Representative Andrea and Philip Lee, and Caldwell banker James R. Ford and Associates. Well, a parade is always great when you have all types of antique vehicles, and here's a great antique fire engine. Yes, they aren't the big hook and ladder trucks of today. They weren't that way always. Here's those wooden ladders and an antique fire engine of the Valley past. Here comes another fire truck into view for this Veterans Parade 2012. This one also of antique vintage, but how sharp and red and all shined up and ready as a part of a big thank you to all the veterans, but this year particularly focusing in on the veterans of World War I. That was the war that was to end all wars. It didn't turn out that way, but it was surely hoped that World War I was exactly that. And here's the VFW post number 2283 post, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And what a great job they do throughout the year in promoting veterans' rights and keeping the Valley informed on what's happening with veterans throughout the year. Here, more flags. The flag's so important, and of course, that represents exactly what all the freedoms and rights that, of course, we stand for here in the United States. Here's the Salvation Army, another group. We were talking about the American Red Cross just a little while ago, but the Salvation Army also, when disaster strikes, no matter whether it's war or whether it's natural disaster, the Salvation Army is there, and there's one of their mobile trucks right there to show you exactly their support for Veterans 2012. Here's a big fire truck from the Crow Mountain Fire Department, representing our great rural fire departments here in the Arkansas River Valley. And thanks to the Crow Mountain Fire Department for being a part of this year's parade. Here's the Pope County Office of Emergency Management Search and Rescue Group. Of course, they are always standing by in case there are lost people, etc. To go out, they have all those vehicles to go, whether it's into the woods or on the water of Lake Dardanelle, whatever it happens to be. The Pope County OEM, Office of Emergency Management Search and Rescue Group, there to serve when disaster needs. Another big fire truck. Now here is a hook and ladder truck. This is the Russellville Fire Department hook and ladder truck, the big truck. Of course, here we have fires that firemen need to get to taller recesses of houses or buildings. Of course, the hook and ladder provided by the Russellville Fire Department is always there, ready to serve. What a great group of guys these firefighters are. Here's the American Legion Women's Auxiliary. They always say behind a great man is an even greater woman. Well, that's exactly the case with the American Legion. Even though the American Legion does so much, the Women's Auxiliary there always as a support to American Legion members and to veterans everywhere. Boy, what a beautiful parade this year. A big parade with lots of units involved. And here is American Legion Post number 20. Many of you, of course, have many fond memories from many different reasons of the American Legion hut, which is located over by the depot. But that's where the American Legion Post number 20 calls home, and where veterans gather, and where, of course, veterans' issues are discussed and they work on. And there are many of our great veterans. We salute you, veterans, for your service. Look at them riding there on this year's American Legion Post 20 float. More units coming on. Here's Sergeant Bill coming along, riding in that white convertible. A World War II vet is Sergeant Bill. And, of course, as we said, this year's emphasis is on the veterans of World War I. But we are not forgetting for a moment the service and the commitment and the sacrifice made by those from World War II, those from the Korean conflict. And, of course, following this, there's Jim Bob Humphreys, of course, standing there in the black suit, who, of course, is the chairman of the Veterans Day Committee. And, of course, following this, there'll be a big salute to freedom ceremony over near the depot. And what parade would there be without a great group of antique cars from the Russellville and River Valley Antique Auto Club? Now, I'm not going to try to get into what each and every one of these different antique cars are, although I remember many of them. I guess that's why I'm an antique also. But let me tell you, there's some great vintage vehicles, and that's part of the remembering also, is to remember those times when these vehicles were, new and a part of our youth days, maybe our college days at Arkansas Tech, our days at Arkansas Tech University or at Russellville High School or one of the area high schools. There's a Metropolitan car, not even made any longer. There's an all-terrain vehicle there. I believe that right there is a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. I said I wasn't going to get in and try to name all of these, and no telling how old this old buggy is, going back almost to those days of World War I. World War I, of course, is the end of World War I was exactly the reason that Veterans Day was established. 11/11 of 11, the 11th hour of the 11th month, November 11th, 1918, when the armistice was signed in the rail car at Versailles, ending World War I, and that a year later, exactly 1 year later, the first Veterans Day was held. So that's exactly why we're having Veterans Day today. Lots of different antique vehicles, Volkswagens with a big American flag on board. There's a Volkswagen bus. There's another one behind that. Those Volkswagen buses have become, again, very popular by collectors. The Antique Auto Club, they're out in force this evening for this beautiful, sunshiny Veterans Day of 2012. And I think that's a very recognizable red Mercury, and I believe that's Keith Williams at the helm of that antique Mercury in the parade today here in Russellville for the Russellville Veterans Day 2012. More antique cars come by as your parade for 2012 is brought to you by Liberty Bank. Representative Andrea and Philip Lee, Caldwell Banker James R. Ford and Associates, and Advanced Collision Solutions. Older Chevrolet there and some of the older cars from the Antique Auto Club coming by, and they were well represented in this year's 2012 parade, again with the theme of remembering World War I, the Great War. The World War I, which featured, of course, maybe you remember the stories of Alvin York, who tried to become a conscientious objector and later was, of course, a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, I believe, for all of the German troops that he captured there on the front in World War I. More and more antique cars coming by. Hope you're enjoying watching the Veterans Day 2012 parade. You can see there's a big crowd on hand for this year's parade, and well, there should be, in saying thank you to all of these. The Military Officers Association there. And coming up now, Russell Mayor Bill Eaton. Mayor coming by, and of course, he of course leads the city of Russellville. So, Russellville Mayor Bill Eaton in this year's 2012 Veterans Day Parade. And I believe that one, a 1939 model, as we have the final vehicles of the antique cars presented here for Veterans Day 2012. Let's move now as we move closer to the depot for the Salute to Freedom ceremony for Veterans Day 2012.
Okay, if you people want to go ahead and grab a seat, I think everybody's going to be here, so you're more than welcome to grab a seat. I want to welcome everybody here to the 8th Annual Salute to Freedom ceremony. Your attendance here is certainly appreciated. You know, it's a time to honor our veterans who have served our great country. It's a time to thank those that are living and to remember those who have passed on and left us with such great memories. We must never forget those who gave their lives defending our country and the freedoms we enjoy. You know, our individual freedoms are something that do not come without a cost. I think we all realize that. And for generations now, Americans have heeded the call to protect their nation. And on Veterans Day, it's very important to stop for a moment and take stock of what this day really means. You know, it's not just a day off from work. It's not just a sale down at the furniture store. You know, it's not even just a parade. But it's a day that we really think about the ones that serve our country. You know, especially now, it gives us such great meaning because we have American men, servicemen, and servicewomen deployed overseas. Makes it even more important. We thank you, veterans, for the service to our country, and we thank those of you that have come out and taken your time this evening to honor them today. Now, would you please stand for the presentation of colors? The colors will be presented this afternoon by the Arkansas Tech University ROTC unit under the direction of Master Sergeant John Folkenworth, Commander. You'd please remain standing. We'll be led in prayer this afternoon by Reverend Jeff Cheatham, a U.S. naval veteran of the Vietnam War.
Let us pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly bow in recognition of your providential care over our country in times of peace and in times of war. We are grateful for patriot dreams that have defended against those who will destroy our way of life and enslave us for selfish pleasure. We ask your guidance and blessing upon our president, our governor, and the legislature that serves to protect and strengthen this republic. We further thank you for the thousands who have proudly wore the military uniform of their choice to openly declare their love and loyalty to our nation. May we never forget the commitment of our forefathers to you as God and Lord of all. We ask these things through his Son's name. Amen.
You know, the flag we love is the enduring symbol of freedom of the United States of America. Would you please join us in the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance, led this afternoon by Jim Tucker, who is a son of a World War I veteran, James Tucker, of the 142nd Field Artillery Brigade, Battery C.
Thank you. Will you please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. And if you'll just remain standing, the Arkansas Tech Symphonic Band, under the lead of Christopher Anderson, will play the Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem. Thank you, and you can be seated. We need to recognize some of our special guests this afternoon. Pope County Judge Jim Ed Gibson's here. Jim. Aaron Duval, the Pope County Sheriff. And we appreciate Sheriff Duval always supporting and help coordinating the 309 trustees that help us so much in our program here. Jeff Humphrey, newly named Russellville Police Chief. Glad to have you. And I think Bill Eaton is here, Russellville Mayor. And we're glad to, there he is right there. Glad to have all y'all here. We really appreciate y'all supporting our event. Of course, we have major sponsors that help. They're such an important part of today's event. You know, they supply resources to cover the expenses of the program, and they all appreciate our veterans and are so glad to do that. Our major sponsors are Mr. Jim Bob Humphrey of Humphrey Funeral Service. You betcha. Terry Freeman of Bibler Brothers Lumber, Roy Reeves of Liberty Bank, Mr. Donnie Frederick of St. Mary's Regional Medical Center, and let me personally say that Sorrell's Body Shop is always very proud to be a part of this event for the Veterans Day program. Of course, there's many others that help make this event possible. They're listed there in your program, and be sure to give them a word of thanks because it does take a whole lot of people. It takes a village, as they say, to put one of these events together, and we appreciate so much all the work that's put into it. Of course, the Rogers Rye Post of the Veterans of Foreign War has always been a great supporter. They've been a supporter of the parade since the 1960s, and certainly a great supporter of these events. Also, the Riggs Hamilton American Legion Post 20. Another great supporter, and those veteran organizations are so vital in our community, and we appreciate all the things that they do for our servicemen and our veterans. There is a Project Wounded Warrior, and the American Legion is taking up donations to help those that go overseas defending our country and come back wounded, and they take up donations to help those service people and, of course, their families in their time of need. So we really appreciate them. Now, at this time, we're going to enjoy another featured tune from the Arkansas Tech Symphonic Band under the direction of Christopher Anderson. Chris? Thanks so much, Chris. We appreciate the Arkansas Tech Band being with us every year. Okay, here comes the old 514 rolling through. We'll take a break while he's blowing those horns.
Hey, I think Betsy will ring time.
Betsy, did you arrange that time? No. Okay. You know, those of us that have been involved in some of the different events concerning our military and the local veterans know that these things don't happen without the efforts and inspiration of one man. Jim Bob Humphrey is the chairman of the Salute to Freedom Task Force, but he's much more than that. Jim Bob recognizes and believes that it's the responsibility of all citizens and all civilians to respect and honor our veterans during peacetime and during wartime. He's a tireless worker when it comes to honoring those in the military, and he's a great friend to all veterans. And I'm proud to call him my friend, Mr. Jim Bob Humphrey.
Thank you, Russellville, Arkansas, Polk County, Arkansas River Valley. What a great day it has been. and what a fantastic event today. I just want to recognize a couple of people before I introduce our keynote speaker. I want to recognize the Salute to Freedom Task Force members. It's a large group of people, volunteers who work very diligently to put this event on each year. They are at these tables. Some of them are over here. Would you just raise your hand, kind of wave to the crowd, members of the Salute to Freedom Task Force, and let's give them a big round of applause. That's a pretty big sound coming from 30 band pieces over there, Chris. Well done. Thank you so much, Arkansas Tech University Band, and for staying with us. Let's just recognize them. Excellence in music, and just an outstanding director and bandsman, and we are so thankful. Yeah, he's going to stand up, so now you can really give him a good thank you, Chris. We really appreciate it. I'd like to just take just a moment and say thank you to my wife. Betty Humphrey has been my wife for 36 years. There goes the train. And she supports me in all these efforts and is my best friend and helps me in many ways because I need a lot of help. Thank you, Betty. Can we just, y'all help me kind of say thank you to her? There's 3 tables here that have information for you after this program is over. Soldier Bear would love to have some help with that. Our program right now, we have 85 soldiers from Clarksville, part of the 39th Combat Engineers for the 39th, and then they are being joined. They're in Afghanistan, and I visited with Keith about this a little bit. And these guys, you know, this is road clearance and IED clearance. It's very dangerous work. They're going to be deployed for 12 months or about 12 months, and they are being joined by a group of security soldiers from Rhode Island and from Chicago. So we've Soldier Bear has adopted this group of roughly 250 soldiers, men and women soldiers, and we are doing a project for their children, and we'll be shipping those bears between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We would love to have financial support with that. That's about an $8,000 project, about $35 per bear. So we'd love to have your help on that. Honor Flight, if you are a World War II veteran, and we're going to recognize you in just a minute, if you've not been on the Honor Flight, please sign up for Honor Flight. And then also that is paid for entirely by Walmart and by Tyson as corporate sponsors. We have several people. Can we just recognize real quickly our Honor Flight attendees? If you've been on Honor Flight, would you raise your hand? Yeah, let's just recognize those folks. Here's several of these just this past fall. Pauline Minton Cathcart and Jock Davis and just several others, and just had a wonderful time. They have a guardian that goes with them, and I was a guardian for Jock Davis and 3 of the others, but they kind of I had to try to keep up with them. I don't know why. They didn't need a guardian. That was just fantastic. And we had such a wonderful time. What a great event, and what a great program. And then finally, at the table at the back, we're so much hopeful that these 145 soldiers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, who served in World War I in the 142nd Field Artillery, Battery G, later designated Battery C. And what an awesome-looking group of guys, and we're so much hopeful. We've identified about 10 of them. Maddie Dale is 98 years old. She identified 2 of her uncles in that photo, Owen Waite and Bud Waite. She said she was 4 years old when that photo was taken. So that is some very cool stuff, and we're hopeful to have that photograph, as many as identified as possible, and take that to the Russellville Library. Okay. It's my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. This gentleman, Colonel Keith A. Clemmer, has a very long list of accomplishments, a very distinguished military career behind him and ahead of him. He served 29 years in the military, received his commission as a second lieutenant at Arkansas State University in 1985. He is commanded at the battery through brigade level, and you military people know the significance of that. He graduated in the United States Army War College in 2007 in Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. Most recently served as Chief of Staff for the Arkansas National Guard. multiple deployments overseas, participated in Operation Desert Storm in 1991 as a liaison officer to the British 1st Armored Division, commanded the 1st 206 Field Artillery right here in Russellville from 03 to 05, and led them in combat in Taji, Iraq. Recently received his U.S. Senate confirmation as a Brigadier General, September 2012. He and his wife, Sandra, live here in Russellville. They have 2 children, Gunnar and Rachel. The most important thing I want to tell you about this gentleman is he is a true leader. He is a true patriot. And his leadership extends not just on the job, but every facet of his life as a Christian man, as a family man. Please join me in welcoming my good friend, Colonel Keith Clemmer.
Well, all right, I appreciate the remarks from Jim Bob and all the work that he's done. I'm not sure if he's still in the audience tonight, but Jeff Montgomery, Colonel Jeff Montgomery, is a former commander of the 142nd Fires Brigade, and also a Desert Storm veteran, and also a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I want to recognize his presence, and also just want to acknowledge our elected officials, our judge, mayor, chief of police, and then our sheriff for all of your support. And I know you guys do a lot for the veterans in this community. For my prepared remarks, I want to thank Jamie for his efforts today, not only supporting the event, but also just for his emceeing the event today. Also thank Jim Bob and the entire Salute to Freedom Committee for putting together this great program. On behalf of the thousands of River Valley and Arkansas veterans, I want to express our gratitude at the dedicated efforts this community puts forth to honor our nation's heroes. I believe we are all aware that Russellville and all of the River Valley is a center of strength and support for our veterans and their families. Today, we especially honor those Americans who fought during World War I. To tell the River Valley story of World War I is to tell the story of our nation. On April 6, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany and officially entered World War I. 6 weeks later, on May 18, 1917, our elected leaders passed the Selective Service Act, authorizing the President to increase military strength of our armed forces. As a result, every male living within the United States between the ages of 18 and 45 was required to register for the draft, including those here in Pope County and across the River Valley. The depot behind you was used to muster the River Valley contingent of troops in 1917, preparing for World War I. In July 1917, Russellville, Dardanelle, and the surrounding areas were all part of the 2nd Arkansas Infantry. And in 1918, they converted to the Field Artillery and became the 142nd Field Artillery Regiment. And as you see behind you on the table, that's the unit that's represented in that transition. The 142nd is still around today, and it's headquartered in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Many of these men stayed stateside in places like Camp Pike, Arkansas, and Camp Beauregard, Louisiana. Some traveled later that year to join Allied forces across Europe, Africa, and Asia. Many River Valley men were much like their fellow Arkansan Herman Davis. Many of you may be aware of his story. David was one of General Pershing's 100 greatest stories of World War I, outlining individual acts of heroism. In fact, he was number 4 on the list, so he was up at the very top. Davis was an Army scout, he was an Arkansan, and he was required to go out in advance of his company. On patrol in a valley near Verdun, France, his platoon came under fire from a German machine gun situated on a distant hill. Davis crawled within 50 yards of the gun and killed the enemy gunners. In other engagement, he is known to have killed soldiers from as far away as 1,000 yards. He was typical of an Arkansas soldier. When asked about it, he said, "Oh, that was just good shooting distance, 1,000 yards." He was just typical of our soldiers today. Nationally, World War I was called the Great War. It started quickly but took more than 4 years to fight. And what's most astounding, by the end of the war, it claimed nearly 10 million lives and an additional 28 million wounded or missing. The numbers are mind-boggling, especially in light of our wars today. President Woodrow Wilson called it the war to end all wars. Of course, he would be proven wrong as World War II erupted less than 20 years later. Winston Churchill perhaps said it the best. The war was decided in the first 20 days. And all that happened after that consisted of battles which, however formidable and devastating, were but desperate and vain appeals against the decision of fate. World War I began in 1914 over an incident in the Balkans. A Serbian nationalist stepped from a crowd in Sarajevo and shot an Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, killing both. This same Balkans is today where Americans still serve, protecting the peace. As in past wars, the European continent was divided over the incident. On one side stood the Central Powers of Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire, as well as Bulgaria. The Allied powers included France, Russia, and Great Britain, and later the United States. Although each side felt the war would be won rather quickly, it resulted in an all too famous trench warfare, as we've seen in many movies of the time. Both Allied and Central Powers quickly became killing machines. Military leaders fought the war using a combination of new technology and classic rules of warfare. At the Battle of Somme in 1910, 60,000 British soldiers were killed and wounded in just one day of fighting. At the Battle of Verdun from February to December of 1916, German and French forces recorded almost 800,000 casualties. The United States remained neutral throughout the war's first years. Wilson was re-elected president in 1916, and the slogan that he ran on was, "He kept us out of the war." But in 1917, Germany instituted unrestricted submarine warfare even upon U.S. merchant ships, and the U.S. Congress declared war. The first American troops journeyed to France in June 1917. Following a parade through France, Army Colonel Charles E. Stanton said, "Lafayette, we are here," a phrase that gave heart to the Allies. Army General John J. Pershing commanded the Army Expeditionary Force. His mission was to join the fight, but only as an American under American commanders. The Allies wanted American units piecemeal as replacements for their own decimated forces. Adding to the pressure at that time was the Russian Revolution of 1917 and its ultimate withdrawal from the alliance. German and Austrian forces concentrated on the Western Front, and in a gamble that almost paid off, German forces attacked towards Paris before the American strength could be mustered. French and British leaders asked for American units to fight and stop the German offensive. This they did. Some 60,000 American soldiers and Marines helped save Paris. Many of the members of the Arkansas National Guard's 142nd Field Artillery arrived in time to help in the war effort in 1918. From May until the armistice in November 1918, more than 50,000 Americans died in battle. Sadly, even more died of illness. At the war's end, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, about 113,000 Americans had paid the ultimate sacrifice. At the end of the war, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed the day Armistice Day, and later in 1954, Congress renamed it Veterans Day, which we celebrate here today. On this cool November day, we not only honor those brave Americans who fought in World War I, but they're veterans of all of our nation's wars and those who continue to serve today. You have guaranteed the security of America and our way of life from our independence through all the wars since, and even the small but lethal campaigns across the world. Our veterans have served and preserved the nation. Their dedication, their courage, and their determination inspire and teach us the rewards of service to our great nation. To our veterans today, we honor your commitment and sacrifice. And above all, we honor your service. Our veterans, both past and present, have conquered and continue to conquer new and emerging threats. Their dedication and sacrifice will provide for the prosperity, safety, and freedom of future generations and the country we serve. Because of their sacrifices, the United States of America will not merely endure, we will prevail. To close my remarks today, I want to call upon a poem by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae that was penned in the spring of 1915. And many of you are aware of its title, On Flanders Fields. In Flanders fields where the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from falling hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders field. The poem is a call to remember those who served and those who died. It was also a call, most importantly, for us today to keep the faith, to carry the flame of freedom for future generations. This is our charge today. I'd like to thank the Salute to Freedom Committee again, as well as all those who have participated in today's parade and ceremony. You know, having been to several of these ceremonies over the last many years, there's certain things about Russellville and about the people that participate in this ceremony that bring a light and a life to the veterans that have served. And for that, I thank you. And in closing, I pray God's blessing on each of you and upon our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel Clemmer. We appreciate those words. You know, and the remembrance of World War I. Today, you may have noticed the Grand Marshal of our parade was a riderless horse, or sometimes known as a caparison's horse. The committee felt this would be a fitting remembrance of our World War I soldiers. The caparison's horse, without a rider, and with the boots reversed in the stirrups, has come to symbolize a warrior that will ride no more. Abraham Lincoln was the first president of the United States to be officially honored by a riderless horse in his funeral procession. The simple black boots reversed in the stirrups represented a fallen leader looking back on his troops for the last time. The caparison horse was also present in the funeral processions of Ronald Reagan and John F. Kennedy. The horse in today's parade was Miss Southern Comfort, owned by Maria and Ronnie Beasley. We appreciate them letting us use Miss Southern Comfort in today's parade. And the horse was led by Captain Jonathan Metcalf of the Arkansas Army National Guard. I think it was a very fitting symbol of our World War I veterans. And those are the people we honor today. You know, as Colonel Clemmer just said, it was known as the Great War. It's also known as the war to end all wars. But unfortunately, as we know now, as history unfolds, that certainly wasn't the case. Over 4.5 million American troops engaged in that war. And as he said, we had so many casualties. But we need to listen to stories by people like Colonel Clemmer and by family members who tell the stories of those fallen veterans and of the veterans that we love so much that served in World War I. You know, I was just seeing this week about a memorial that was placed in the Mojave Desert to honor the World War I veterans, and it was taken down 13 years ago. But the Supreme Court actually ordered, it was a cross placed on a stone. The Supreme Court actually ordered the cross be replaced, and it has been erected once again. Our last surviving World War I veteran, Frank Buckles, died just a year ago in February of 2011 at the age of 110. He was the last of so many that survived World War I. They're all gone now. But we should never forget their selfless sacrifice to our nation and the fight for freedom for our great country. And it is today, here in Russellville, Arkansas, that we recognize these great veterans and the families of those veterans and the memories that they left behind. We will honor their service by presenting their family members with a challenge coin, minted especially for this event. We'll ask their family members to come up on stage and we will present those coins to them. But at this time, I'd like everyone that had a relative that served in World War I to stand at this time and let us recognize you. Please stand. Anyone who had a family member in World War I. A round of applause for these. As we said, they're gone now, but their memories live on. And now I will ask those who just stood, if y'all would make your way up to the stage. Brother Jock, if you'd lead them up here. If y'all would come up here, we'll present you with a coin. We also want to recognize the other veterans that are in our audience today and show you how much we appreciate you in the service to our country. Please stand as I call your time of service. Please stand now if you served in World War II. I have a couple that are going up. A lot of them are. Okay, round of applause. Korean War veterans, please stand. Vietnam veterans, please stand or raise your hand. Desert Storm and Desert Shield in Kuwait, please stand. Thank you so much. Operation Iraqi Freedom. And now Operation Enduring Freedom, war in Afghanistan. If I could have all of you people form two lines right down from our ramp here, we will present these family members with their coins as we have in the past. If you'll just line up there and they'll come down through there and you can honor them by congratulating them as being family members of World War I. All right, I'm going to ask you all to you come by. What's that? Okay, well, I'll tell you stuff. We're just going to prepare to say the name of your service. Oh, okay. That'd be fine.
Across here, okay, and we're going to point, and then you're going to kind of interview them. Okay, so gentlemen, you come to receive a coin, and then you go to the microphone.
My father, Roy C. Davis, Army.
Grandpa Bomer is United States Army cook.
Thank you so much for your seat. We're going to hand a number of coins for you and your sister and your brothers. You should see them. Very good. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Royce.
Dolan Burris.
Wow. My dad was in World War I. He's Steve Hloss. I'm Tom Hloss.
My father was James W. Tucker, Corporal, United States Army.
My dad, Brian Norden, Army.
My granddad was Frank Baver in the U.S. Army.
My dad, Paul Montgomery, was Army Air Force. Thank you.
Somebody else made a good speech. Part of the speech is a prayer, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
John Anderson.
John Anderson, tell us about your father right here.
Right where?
Name right. Tell his name right there.
John Anderson Sr.
Thank you.
U.S. Navy.
U.S. Navy.
My grandfather was Feder Stickney Meek with Yell County in World War I. My father was Class of 49 West Point and Vietnam veteran Silver Star. Thank you.
Step right. Speak right.
My grandfather is Johnny Mitchell from Havana.
Step right.
My father, Farlow Burt, Army, served in France.
Very good. Thank you.
My great-grandfather, Thomas Holder, he served in Africa and died there.
My dad, Alphonse Grenier, 75th Infantry, U.S. Army.
Two grandfathers, Eldon Elliott and Harvlow, U.S. Army.
My granddad, Roy McSpadden, in the Army. Thank you, Roy.
My granddad, Odie West, 1st Division, U.S. Army, serial number 286-9090.
My father, Harry Clinton Booker, Private U.S. Army Bugler.
Clayton Kimball, great uncle.
Who was your World War II kin folks?
My World
War I.
John W. Minton, my father.
Say it right here.
John W. Minton, my father. He served in France.
Thank you so much.
My grandfather, James Paul Alexander, U.S. Army Infantry, France.
My grandfather, Bernus Smith of Clarksville, U.S. Army.
Corey Burnett from Atkins, U.S. Army. Great-grandfather.
My father, John Abner Young, United States Army in France.
My father, Dalton Clyde Halbrook, U.S. Army.
And he was my granddaddy.
There you go.
Both my grandfathers, Eunice Teal from Russellville and Lennox Sweden from Adkins, both in the Army.
My father's Chester Johnson, U.S. Army.
My father, Clifton R. Fields Sr. from Dover, Infantry, France, Moose Argonne campaign, lost his right leg.
Great-grandfather, Delbert Darrell Edson, Navy.
My grandma's dad served in Pearl Harbor.
My grandfather, Audie Lee Hobart Sorrells, And my great-grandfather, Corey Burnett, also served in the Army. And we will be presenting coins to all the other veterans that have showed up and supported these World War II family members.
Just keep the left side, you'll take the right side.
Jim Bob. Run to a Bible class right now.
I understand.
I got 10 minutes to get there. I'm going in uniform.
Thank you, sir.
It's a new group we formed over here. 10 men forming a new group. First meeting. We had our first meeting last night.
You'll make your way back to your seats. We'll conclude our program in just a moment. Are they ready over there? Are they ready for that? Thank you, Christopher Anderson and the Arkansas Tech Band. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the round of applause for them. We appreciate all the things they do for us. We certainly appreciate all you family members that showed up and showed respect for your World War II or World War I veterans and all you other veterans that showed up today. We really appreciate your service. And we once again we want to certainly thank the Salute to Freedom Task Force and all the work they've done putting together the parade and then this ceremony. They do a great job, and we really appreciate them. And let's once again give a round of applause for Jim Bob Humphrey and all he does for us. If you would stand now, we'll close our ceremony with a 21-gun salute, followed by the playing of taps. Our gun salute is presented by the Rogers Drive Post 2283 of the Veterans of Foreign Wars under the direction of Maynard Gordon. Taps will be played by the ATU Symphonic Band. Please prepare yourself for 3 volleys of the World War II Infantryman's M1 rifle. Thank you so much for your attendance this evening. And remember, when you run across a veteran, you be sure tip your hat to him and tell him you thank him for all he's done for our great country. This concludes our ceremony. If you can stay around, help us fold up some chairs and put up some things this evening, we sure would appreciate it. Thank you and have a good evening.